9:21 a.m. I just sat down at my desk with my coffee still untouched when the email from HR hit my inbox. We thank you for your contributions. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. 30 minutes earlier, I'd brought the entire boardroom to their feet with a standing ovation for my winning pitch, crushing the CEO's son. What they didn't know, I was the sole owner of the $77 million patent their company was about to raise funding on. My name is Natalie Rhodes, and for 10 years, I've been the director of product strategy at Varyon Technologies, a medical device startup that promised to revolutionize personalized healthcare. At 38, I'd poured my soul into this company, working 80-hour weeks, missing family dinners, and sacrificing relationships for what I believed was a shared vision of changing lives through innovation. But here's what the glossy company website won't tell you. Varyon Technologies was a kingdom built on nepotism and silent suffering. Our CEO, Marcus Vance, ran the company like a medieval court where bloodline trumped brilliance. His son, Bradley Vance, held the grandiose title of Director of Innovation, despite having the innovative capacity of a photocopier. While I was pulling all-nighters perfecting biosensor algorithms, Bradley was perfecting his golf swing at country clubs, billing it as client relationship building. The real poison in Varyon's culture wasn't just the favoritism, it was the gaslighting. Every breakthrough I achieved was presented as a team effort led by Bradley. Every patent application I drafted mysteriously needed his name as co-inventor. Every investor presentation I created somehow became his deck by morning. I watched my ideas get repackaged, my research get rebranded, and my innovations get reassigned to the golden boy who couldn't explain the basic science behind them if his trust fund depended on it. 4 years ago, I made a decision that would later save my career. While developing our flagship product, a revolutionary biometric chip that could detect diseases before symptoms appeared, I quietly filed the core patent under my own name. Not through company channels, not with company lawyers, just me, my personal attorney, and the U.S. Patent Office. The company hadn't gone public yet, and I'd been careful never to sign any intellectual property assignment agreements beyond the standard employment contract, which had conveniently vague language about work product. I kept this ace up my sleeve, watching and waiting, documenting every email, every timestamp, every piece of evidence that showed the innovation's true origin, because I knew this day would come. The day when being better wouldn't be enough. The day when corporate politics would demand a sacrifice, and I'd be the obvious choice. That day arrived in the form of an internal pitch competition. The winner would represent Varyon at the Series C funding round next month, a $300 million valuation riding on the presentation. It should have been a formality. Everyone knew I was the architect of our technology, but Bradley needed a win to justify his existence to the board, and Daddy needed to prove his son belonged in the C-suite. So there I stood, coffee growing cold on my desk, staring at my termination email, knowing that somewhere in the building, Bradley was probably practicing my pitch in the mirror, stumbling over technical terms he'd never bothered to understand. The pitch competition took place in our main conference room at 8:15 a.m., the Horizon Suite, as Marcus pretentiously called it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Seattle's skyline, and 12 board members sat around the mahogany table like judges at a tribunal. 3 potential Series C investors joined via video link, their faces arranged on the wall-mounted screen like a Mount Rushmore of venture capital. I went first. 20 minutes to condense 4 years of blood, sweat, and breakthrough science into digestible slides. I opened with a live demonstration, pricking my finger and placing a drop of blood on our prototype chip. Within seconds, the display showed my glucose levels, cortisol spikes, early markers for inflammation, and a dozen other biomarkers that typically required expensive lab work. This isn't just another wearable, I explained, my voice steady despite the stakes. This is preventive medicine democratized. Imagine detecting pancreatic cancer 5 years before symptoms. Imagine knowing you're having a heart attack before you feel the first chest pain. Imagine. How accurate is the false positive rate? Interrupted Dr. Sarah Winters from Apex Ventures, one of our target investors. Under 0. 3% validated across 10,000 clinical trials. I responded instantly. We've partnered with Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic for independent verification. The data sheets are in Appendix C. For 20 minutes, I fielded every technical question with precision. I showed them the manufacturing scalability, the regulatory pathway already 60% cleared with the FDA, the patent landscape that protected our innovation moat. When I finished, the room was silent for a beat before Dr. Winters unmuted herself. This is extraordinary. Truly game-changing work. The board members nodded, some taking notes, others exchanging impressed glances. Even Marcus couldn't hide a flicker of approval. Then it was Bradley's turn. He strutted to the front in his $3,000 suit and began his presentation. My presentation, stolen from the shared drive and butchered beyond recognition. He mispronounced biosensor as biosensor, like it was 2 words. He claimed the chip could detect over 1,000 diseases when our validated panel covered 47 conditions. When Dr. Winters asked about specificity rates, he panicked. The specific rates are very specific, he stammered. We have all the best rates, industry-leading rates. I watched him drown in his own incompetence, mixing up sensitivity with specificity, confusing our proprietary enzyme coding with some kind of special medical paint. It was painful, it was embarrassing, it was everything I'd expected. When the presentations ended, the verdict was unanimous. Every board member, every investor, even Marcus's golf buddy Richard, who usually rubber-stamped anything Bradley touched, they all voted for my pitch. Dr. Winters specifically requested that I lead the Series C presentation, calling my grasp of the technology unparalleled. The room erupted in applause. People stood up, shaking my hand, patting my shoulder. For one shining moment, merit had triumphed over nepotism. Bradley's face flushed crimson, his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a molar. Marcus maintained his CEO smile, but his eyes had gone cold, calculating. Excellent work, Natalie, he said, his handshake firm but brief. We'll debrief this afternoon. But there would be no debrief, no victory lap, no moment of professional vindication, because Marcus Vance didn't build his empire by letting talent threaten his bloodline. The meeting ended at 8:47 a.m. By 8:55 a.m., I was back at my desk, pulling up the Series C prep documents. At 9:01 a.m., HR's email arrived like a precision-guided missile. Reduction in force. Eliminating redundancies. Generous severance package contingent on signing the attached NDA and non-compete. The security guard who appeared at my desk 5 minutes later was apologetic, but firm. I'm sorry, Ms. Rhodes, I need to escort you out. You have 15 minutes to pack your personal items. 15 minutes to erase 10 years. I was a security risk now, a potential threat to the company I'd helped build. As I placed my coffee mug in a cardboard box, the one that said, World's Best Innovator, a secret Santa gift from happier times, I realized the meeting had been a setup. Let me win publicly. Fire me privately. Bradley would stumble through my presentation to the investors, but with my slides and notes, he'd manage. And I'd be silenced by legal threats and financial desperation. They thought they'd won. They thought wrong. The security guard's hand hovered near my elbow as I walked through Varyon's lobby for the last time. My cardboard box of belongings balanced against my hip. The receptionist I'd greeted every morning for a decade wouldn't meet my eyes. The badge scanner beeped one final time as my access was revoked in real time. I watched the LED turn from green to red like a flat line on a heart monitor. In the parking garage, I sat in my car, engine off, staring at the concrete wall. The adrenaline that had carried me through the humiliation was fading, replaced by a nauseating cocktail of rage and disbelief. My phone buzzed incessantly. Text messages from colleagues who'd heard the news through the company's efficient gossip network. What happened? From Lisa in marketing. This is bullshit. Call me. From James in engineering. Keep your head up. You're brilliant. From Dr. Patel in R&D. But no one dared to text what they really thought, that I'd been sacrificed to protect Bradley's ego and Marcus's dynasty. In tech, everyone knows the unspoken rules. You can challenge ideas, but never bloodlines. You can outperform nepotism, but never embarrass it. I drove home in a daze, my professional identity evaporating with each mile. When I tried to access my company email from my laptop to save some personal files, I found myself locked out. My Slack account, gone. Our shared drives, inaccessible. Even my corporate LinkedIn had been mysteriously restricted. It was a digital erasure, as thorough as if I'd never existed at Varyon at all. The severance package arrived via courier that afternoon. 3 months' pay, generous by their standards, insulting by mine, in exchange for signing away my right to sue, compete, or even discuss my time at Varyon. The NDA was so comprehensive it practically forbade me from thinking about biosensors. The non-compete would make me unemployable in my field for 2 years. I was pouring my third glass of wine when my phone rang. Unknown number. Natalie, it's Tom Matsuda from Finance. I'm calling from my personal cell. Tom's voice was barely above a whisper, like he was calling from inside a crime scene. I shouldn't be doing this, but you need to know. They're moving forward with the Series C pitch next week. Bradley's presenting your deck, your exact deck. Marcus told the team you had a family emergency and would be taking an extended leave. My wine glass stopped halfway to my lips. They're using my presentation? Everything. Your slides, your projections, even your demonstration script. Bradley's been practicing all afternoon. Marcus brought in a speech coach to help him pronounce the technical terms. The audacity was breathtaking. They weren't just stealing my job. They were stealing my work, my ideas, my intellectual property. There's more, Tom continued, his voice dropping even lower. The valuation they're seeking, it's based entirely on the biosensor patent. The whole $300 million ask is predicated on exclusive ownership of that technology. I've seen the investor deck. They're claiming full IP control. That's when I smiled for the first time since 9:00 a.m. Tom, I said, setting down my wine glass. Check the patent filing for U.S. Patent 894377B. Why? Just check the first name on the inventor list. And Tom, after you do, you might want to update your resume. I hung up and walked to my home office, where a single folder sat in my filing cabinet marked Insurance Policy. Inside were 4 years of documentation, timestamp verified lab notebooks, email chains showing my solo development work, and, most importantly, the official patent certificate from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, issued to Natalie Rhodes, individual inventor. No corporate assignment, no shared ownership, just me. I'd been careful. Every breakthrough had happened during personal time, on personal equipment, funded by my savings. The core innovation predated my employment contract's IP clause by 6 months. I'd even paid the filing fees myself, all $15,000 worth, to ensure clean ownership. My laptop chimed with an encrypted message from Tom. Holy shit, you own it. You own all of it. Yes, I did. And Varyon Technologies was about to pitch a $300 million valuation based on technology they didn't actually possess. Securities fraud, some might call it, the kind that attracted SEC investigations and shareholder lawsuits. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I'd saved 4 years ago, but never called. Diana Morrison, the IP attorney who'd helped me file the patent. She told me then, "This is either the smartest or stupidest thing you've ever done. Time to find out which." As her phone rang, I looked at my reflection in the laptop screen. The woman staring back wasn't the collaborative team player who'd walked into Varyon that morning. She was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Diana, it's Natalie Rhodes. Remember that patent we filed? I think it's time to discuss enforcement. Diana Morrison's law office occupied the entire 47th floor of the Columbia Center, with views that made Varyon's conference room look like a basement. She greeted me at reception herself, a power move that meant she smelled blood in the water. Show me everything, she said, leading me to a conference room where 2 associates were already setting up laptops and legal pads. For 3 hours, we dissected my documentation with surgical precision. Diana's team cross-referenced every timestamp, verified every email header, and traced the development timeline like forensic accountants. When we finished, Diana leaned back in her leather chair with the satisfied expression of a chess player who'd just seen checkmate 10 moves ahead. "This is textbook IP theft," she said. "But we're not going to sue them. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because litigation is a hammer. What we need is a scalpel." She pulled up Varyon's investor list on her screen. Series C investors hate 2 things: surprises and liability. We're going to give them both. The strategy was elegant in its brutality. Instead of a public lawsuit that Varyon could spin as a disgruntled employee's revenge, we'd send carefully crafted notices to each potential investor, alerting them to the disputed patent ownership. Not threats, just facts. The kind of facts that made legal departments nervous and due diligence teams paranoid. "We'll file formal notices with the USPTO first," Diana explained. "Then we'll send certified letters to Apex Ventures, Seraphim Capital, and every other firm on their target list. Very professional, very matter of fact, just informing them that any investment predicated on patent number 8943 of in 7B would be investing in technology Varyon doesn't actually own." "That'll kill the funding round," I said. "That's the point. But here's where it gets interesting." Diana pulled up another document. "Who's Varyon's biggest competitor?" "Novapulse Medical. They've been trying to crack biosensor technology for years." "Perfect. While Varyon scrambles to explain why their crown jewel isn't actually theirs, you'll be fielding competing offers for your patent. Nothing motivates a board like watching their competitor acquire what they thought they owned." We spent the next week preparing a surgical strike. Diana's team drafted notices that were masterpieces of legal intimidation, disguised as helpful information. Each letter included relevant case law about investor liability in IP disputes, recent SEC enforcement actions against companies that misrepresented their intellectual property portfolios, and a helpful copy of my patent certificate with relevant claims highlighted. I, meanwhile, scheduled a meeting with Novapulse's Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Rachel Winters. Yes, the same Dr. Winters who'd praised my presentation at Varyon. Turns out she'd left Apex Ventures 2 years ago to join Novapulse's leadership team. Small world, smaller industry. "I wondered why you were still at Varyon," she said over coffee at a discreet hotel lobby downtown. "Talent like yours usually goes independent or gets poached. Now I understand. You were building something bigger." I slid the patent documentation across the table. She read it twice, her eyes widening with each pass. "This is the breakthrough we've been missing," she breathed. "The enzyme coding process alone would save us 3 years of R&D. I'm not interested in selling the patent outright," I said carefully. "But an exclusive licensing arrangement with the right partner, someone who actually understands the technology. Novapulse would offer you a lab, a team, and 8 figures minimum for exclusive rights," she said without hesitation. "Plus royalties on every unit sold. And Natalie, we'd want you leading the development, your name on the door, your vision driving the product." While Novapulse's legal team began drafting their offer, Diana's letters hit their targets with precision timing, exactly 72 hours before Varyon's scheduled Series C pitch. My phone, silent for days except for recruiters I ignored, suddenly erupted with calls from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Diana did. "Ms. Rhodes is not available for comment," she told each caller. "All inquiries regarding patent number 894377B should be directed through Morrison and Associates." Tom texted me updates from inside Varyon's crumbling kingdom. Emergency board meeting called. Marcus screaming at legal team. Bradley locked in conference room with speech coach, still can't pronounce proprietary. Apex just pulled out of funding round, Seraphim requesting IP clarification. The best part? I hadn't made a single accusation. No lawsuits filed, no press releases issued, no social media rants. Just facts, delivered with clinical precision to the people who mattered most, the ones with checkbooks. By Friday afternoon, as I reviewed Novapulse's initial offer of $120 million for a 10-year exclusive license, I got one final text from Tom. They're in full panic mode. Marcus just fired half the legal department. Bradley's been sent home. Board meeting scheduled for Monday to discuss leadership changes. I turned off my phone and signed my name on the letter of intent. Natalie Rhodes, president of Rhodes Biosystems, a newly formed Novapulse subsidiary. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Not with regret, but with recognition. This was what power actually felt like. Marcus Vance didn't go down without a fight. The man who'd built his empire on other people's innovations wasn't about to let one woman, especially one he'd so easily discarded, destroy everything he'd built. The counterattack began Monday morning with a cease and desist letter delivered to my apartment by a process server who looked apologetic about interrupting my coffee. Varyon was claiming I'd violated my employment agreement, stolen trade secrets, and engaged in corporate espionage. The letter demanded I immediately cease all negotiations with competitors and return all proprietary information to the company. They're grasping at straws, Diana said when I forwarded her the letter. But they're going to make this messy. Marcus has deep pockets and a wounded ego. Dangerous combination. By Tuesday, the tech press had picked up the story. Varyon Technologies' an IP dispute with former executive ran in TechCrunch. The article, clearly planted by Varyon's PR team, painted me as a rogue employee who'd betrayed the company that nurtured her career. They included a quote from Marcus about disappointment in those who put personal gain above collective success. The hypocrisy was staggering, but the damage was real. My LinkedIn filled with connection requests from journalists, competitors, and vultures circling what they assumed was career carnage. 3 companies that had reached out about executive positions suddenly went silent. Novapulse's board began asking questions about the negative publicity. Then Marcus made his biggest mistake. He got personal. Wednesday's Seattle Times business section featured an exclusive interview with Bradley Vance, positioned as the brilliant young innovator whose work had been unfairly overshadowed by a disgruntled former colleague. The article included a photo of Bradley in a lab coat. I'd bet my patent he couldn't even find the lab without GPS, holding up what they called his biosensor prototype. But the killing blow was the quote, "Ms. Rhodes was a valued member of our team, but sometimes personal issues can cloud professional judgment. We wish her well in finding the help she needs." Personal issues. Help she needs. Corporate gaslighting at its finest. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. "Diana," I said, calling her from my car. "Remember those timestamps I showed you? Pull up the security footage from May 15th, 2021. Building 3, Lab 4, 2:47 a.m. Why? Because that's when I had the enzyme coding breakthrough, alone, on security camera. While Bradley was posting Instagram stories from Cabo, Diana laughed, a sharp, predatory sound. "You documented everything." Everything. 4 years of security footage showing me working alone after hours. Email threads where Bradley asked me to explain that science stuff before board meetings. Performance reviews where Marcus himself praised my singular vision and independent innovation. They gave me the rope. Time to show them the noose. We leaked selectively. Not to the press. That would look defensive. Instead, Diana's associates began having lunch with IP attorneys at Seattle's top firms. Word spread through the legal community like wildfire. Varyon's counterclaims weren't just weak, they were potentially sanctionable. Filing false claims about trade secret theft when security footage proved independent development. That bordered on litigation misconduct. Meanwhile, Tom fed me intelligence from inside Varyon's deteriorating fortress. The Series C round was officially dead. 2 board members had resigned. The CFO was exploring opportunities. And Bradley? He'd been quietly removed from all public-facing roles after failing to answer basic technical questions at an investor salvage meeting. Thursday brought desperation disguised as reconciliation. My phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in a week. Marcus Vance. "Natalie," he said, his CEO voice notably absent. "Perhaps we should discuss this situation like adults. We are, Marcus. Through our attorneys. This scorched earth approach benefits no one. Varyon could still have a future. Your technology could still help millions of people through us. My technology will help millions of people. Through Novapulse." Silence. Then, quieter. "What do you want?" I wanted to build something revolutionary with a team that valued innovation over nepotism. That ship sailed at 9:01 a.m. last Monday. Everyone makes mistakes. No, Marcus. You made a calculation. You calculated that your son's ego was worth more than my contribution. You calculated that I'd slink away quietly. You calculated wrong. The board is prepared to discuss reinstating you with a promotion. Chief Technology Officer, reporting directly to you? To Bradley? No. I pulled into Novapulse's parking garage, my new keycard ready. I don't want to be reinstated, Marcus. I want you to understand something. You didn't just lose an employee, you lost the future, and you handed it to your biggest competitor. This isn't over, he said, the mask finally slipping. I'll bury you in litigation. You'll spend every cent of that Novapulse deal on lawyers. Maybe. But while I'm fighting you in court, I'll be developing the next generation of biosensors with Novapulse's resources. And every investor you pitch for the next decade will remember you as the CEO who gave away a $300 million patent because you couldn't stand being upstaged by someone without your last name. I hung up and walked into my new building, where Dr. Rachel Winters waited in the lobby with a bottle of champagne and my new team. 12 brilliant engineers poached from various competitors, all eager to work on technology that actually mattered. The war wasn't over, but the battle lines were drawn. And for the first time in my career, I was fighting from a position of power. The end came not with a bang, but with a regulatory filing. On a gray Seattle morning, 3 months after my termination, the Securities and Exchange Commission announced an investigation into Varyon Technologies for potential misrepresentation of intellectual property assets in investor communications. The filing was clinical, bureaucratic, and absolutely devastating. I read about it over breakfast at my new office, the Seattle skyline reflecting off my coffee mug. Diana had warned me this was coming when investors discovered they'd nearly funded a company based on patents it didn't own. Someone had to call the cops. Seraphim Capital, facing their own liability concerns, had made that call. The SEC doesn't play around with IP fraud, Diana explained during our morning call. Marcus is about to learn the difference between corporate hardball and federal investigation. The dominoes fell fast after that. Within 48 hours, Varyon's remaining investors forced an emergency board meeting. Tom, now openly communicating since he'd given notice, sent me play-by-play updates. 10:47 a.m. Board just voted no confidence in Marcus. 7-2. 11:15 a.m. Marcus refusing to resign, threatening to sue the board. 11:52 a.m. Security just escorted Marcus out. He threw his laptop. 12:30 p.m. Bradley's been terminated, didn't even get a box for his things. By afternoon, Varyon's stock had dropped 67% in private market trading. The company that had valued itself at $300 million was now worth less than its office lease obligations. The interim CEO, brought in to attempt salvage operations, immediately announced a strategic restructuring. Corporate speak for everything is on fire. But the true finale came when Novapulse made its move. With Varyon in freefall, Rachel Winters saw an opportunity for the kind of aggressive play that made business school case studies. We're going to make them an offer, she told me during our Thursday morning meeting. Not for the company, for the talent. Every engineer, every researcher who actually understands the technology. We'll gut what's left of their R&D. Hostile talent acquisition, I said. Elegant. Your former colleagues deserve better than unemployment because Marcus played favorites. We'll offer positions to anyone who actually contributed to the innovation. The recruitment letters went out Friday morning. By Monday, 17 of Varyon's top engineers had accepted positions at Novapulse. Dr. Patel, who'd texted support during my termination, would be leading a team under me. Even Lisa from marketing jumped ship, bringing with her detailed knowledge of Varyon's failed strategies, all perfectly legal to share, since Marcus had been too cheap to make anyone below director level sign non-competes. The final insult came when we acquired Varyon's physical assets at bankruptcy auction. For $2.3 million, less than Marcus's annual compensation. Novapulse bought the entire contents of the labs I'd built. I personally supervised the removal of equipment from Lab 4, the place where I'd spent countless nights perfecting the technology that Marcus thought he owned. Standing in that empty lab, I found a whiteboard still covered with my handwriting, enzyme configurations I'd sketched during a late-night breakthrough. The cleaning crew had been told to leave it. Marcus had apparently kept it as a trophy, proof of the brilliance he'd controlled. I took a photo, then erased it all. The media coverage of Varyon's collapse was brutal but predictable. How Nepotism Killed a Unicorn ran in the Wall Street Journal. Forbes published The $300 Million Delete Key, a CEO's Guide to Destroying Your Company in 1 week. But the story that mattered most ran in the Seattle Times business section, the same paper that had printed Bradley's puff piece. Novapulse announces revolutionary biosensor platform, led by former Varyon executive. The article included a photo of me in my new lab, holding the production-ready biosensor chip that would ship to hospitals in 6 months. No lab coat costume, no staged poses, just an inventor with her invention, finally properly credited. Marcus Vance's lawsuit against me was quietly withdrawn after the SEC informed him that litigation might complicate his own legal situation. Bradley Vance's LinkedIn now listed him as seeking new opportunities with no mention of his time at Varyon. The company itself limped along for another month before being acquired for parts by a medical supplies distributor who wanted the customer list and nothing else. The night the acquisition was announced, Tom texted me one last update. Just watched them take down the Varyon sign from the building. Facilities guy said it's going to be a WeWork. I poured myself a glass of wine, good wine now that I could afford it, and opened my laptop. My desktop wallpaper showed the patent certificate that had changed everything. U.S. Patent 894377B. Inventor, Natalie Rhodes. But I didn't dwell on the victory. I had work to do. Real work. With a real team. Building technology that would actually save lives instead of padding executive bonuses. Novapulse had given me everything Varyon had promised but never delivered: respect, resources, and the recognition that innovation came from individuals, not org charts. Tomorrow, I'd be back in the lab at 6 a.m., not because anyone demanded it, but because I had ideas to pursue and the freedom to pursue them. The revenge was complete, but the real satisfaction? That came from building something better from the ashes of what tried to bury me. 6 months later, I stood in my new office at Novapulse's Innovation Center, a corner space flooded with natural light. Nothing like the windowless cube I'd occupied at Varyon for a decade. The walls displayed framed patents, all bearing my name as primary inventor. On my desk sat the first production model of the Novapulse Sentinel, our biosensor that would ship to 200 hospitals next month. The morning sun cast long shadows across the lab floor where my team was already working. Real scientists doing real science, chosen for their brilliance rather than their bloodlines. Dr. Patel waved from her station, holding up a test strip that showed improved sensitivity, another breakthrough that would save lives. I'd just finished reviewing the quarterly projections when my assistant knocked. "Someone here to see you. Says it's personal." Marcus Vance stood in my doorway, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in 6 months. His trademark power suit hung loose on his frame, and the confident CEO bearing had been replaced by something hollow. The SEC investigation had ended with hefty fines, but no jail time. White-collar crime rarely does. But the industry had passed its own verdict. Marcus Vance was radioactive. 5 minutes, I said, not offering him a seat. I came to. He stopped, started again. Bradley's in rehab, cocaine. Apparently, he'd been using for years, trying to cope with the pressure of being what I wanted him to be. I said nothing. This wasn't my damage to absolve. I destroyed my company, my reputation, my family, all to protect a lie. The lie that my son was something he wasn't. That nepotism could somehow transform into merit if I just forced it hard enough. What do you want, Marcus? Nothing. I wanted you to know that I know. You didn't destroy Varyon. I did. The moment I chose bloodline over brilliance, he turned to leave, then paused. The biosensor, it really is revolutionary. It'll save thousands of lives. That should have been enough. Your talent should have been enough. After he left, I returned to my desk and picked up the original sketch I'd drawn on a napkin in 2018, the crude diagram that had evolved into a technology worth hundreds of millions. I'd framed it as a reminder, not of where I'd been, but of what survived when everything else burned away, the idea itself. My computer chimed with an email from the FDA. Full approval for the Sentinel. 6 weeks ahead of schedule. I forwarded it to my team with a simple note. We did it. That afternoon, I gave a presentation to Nova Pulse's board, not fighting for respect or defending my worth, just sharing the science and the possibilities ahead. They listened with genuine interest, asked informed questions, and approved my request for additional research funding without demanding I stroke anyone's ego first. As I walked back to my office, I passed the conference room where Rachel Winters was interviewing candidates. Through the glass, I saw a young woman presenting her research, nervous but brilliant. I recognized the hunger in her eyes, the same drive that had kept me in Lab 4 until 3 a.m. all those years. I knocked and stepped in. Sorry to interrupt, just wanted to say, make sure she meets the team. Technical talent like that deserves to see where she'd actually be working. The candidate's eyes widened with recognition. She'd read the articles, knew the story. I gave her a small nod, woman to woman, innovator to innovator, and left them to it. That evening, as Seattle's skyline glittered outside my window, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the email that had started everything. The 9:01 a.m. termination notice, printed and kept as evidence that became a talisman. I read it one last time. We thank you for your contributions. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. I fed it into the shredder and watched it disappear into ribbons. The truth about revenge is that it's not the destination, it's the transformation. They tried to bury me, not knowing I was a seed. What grew from that burial wasn't just a patent dispute or a corporate collapse. It was the realization that my worth was never theirs to validate or revoke. I picked up my coffee, still hot this time, drunk at my pace, in my office, building my vision, and got back to work. There were lives to save, innovations to pursue, and a future to build on foundations they could never shake again. Because the best revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. Building something so undeniably excellent that it renders your detractors footnotes in your success story. We thank you for your contributions. They'd written. They had no idea how right they were. My contributions were just beginning, and this time, I owned every single one. Thank you for listening to this story. We're truly curious to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please share your location in the comments below so we can connect with listeners everywhere. If this tale of corporate justice resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace revenge or standing up for what's rightfully yours. Your stories inspire ours.